Hey guys, welcome to Traditional Bow Hunting Wilderness Podcast. This is Jason Samkovic. Today we are going to talk about understanding your 4x4 systems for your hunting and off-road vehicles. Many of you guys already have them. Many of you guys are thinking about buying new ones. Whatever your case is, if you're planning on getting a new four-wheel drive vehicle, using it for hunting, with COVID that happened, there's a lot of new people coming into the sport of hunting, looking for new vehicles that they can use for it. There's a tremendous amount of people want this, and off-roading and off-road parks and exploration and overlanding, all of these things are becoming very, very big, significant, fun adventures to do as a family. So it's a good time to do this to kind of give you a crash course 101 that puts it into perspective for you. Very basic stuff, but important that you know. First of all, when it comes to four-wheel drives, I drew a side view and a rear view here. Basically, there are basically three angles that make a huge difference in whatever vehicle you pick for off-road. They're huge. They're the biggest factor in that capability of that vehicle. One of them is going to be your approach angle. Okay, approach angle, if you have your ground here, if this is sitting on the ground, okay, like that, your approach angle is this angle right here that goes like this, okay? This angle is your approach angle. What that means is that how low in this front tire can go, or how steep of a hill you can go down before you hit the front of the vehicle. Because when you hit the front of that, once that bumper ends up hitting ground, your wheels are no longer going to be able to do anything for you. So that approach angle is a tremendous one. So if you're looking at something that you want for off-road in a truck or an SUV or anything like that, a big approach angle like you're seeing here is important, where if this front end comes out this far, now that approach angle is much lower, like that right there, much smaller approach angle, and so you're going to hit ground faster. Okay, if it's a tighter one, you see the difference in there. So that approach angle in the front is very important. How far the front end sticks out past the front tires is a big one that not many people think about or understand. And that is definitely important that you have that approach angle correct, because otherwise, if you don't, then what you're going to have is you're going to have yourself digging in quite often. I've experienced that with some of my trucks as well too. I had a lot of F-150s, tons of F-150s. Had a new one, I've had like 8 or 9 new ones since 08 all the way up through till 18. And as the new body style came out, they put more rake in them. They had that less approach angle, and I was finding that I was digging that front bumper in a lot. Now people say, well, I don't go over hills. Doesn't matter for a hill. We'll come into some of the certain situations where this stuff matters here for you in a minute. But that approach angle is an important one. That one is very, very big that not a lot of people think about. And you can find approach angles, all these angles are listed right in the specs of all of these vehicles, but they are important. The next one is going to be breakover angle. That is this angle right here. Now, breakover angle is not ground clearance. It does help. Ground clearance does help. But the breakover angle is the distance between the wheels to give this angle for where you're going to hit based on these wheels. It almost goes more of a this way to here, because it is going to be where that point is. That's actually probably the best way for me to draw it in there for you so that it makes sense. Is if I do that, let me do it again. Sorry, this is all, it's not like I rehearse this stuff here. So give me a second to take that out of there. So that breakover angle would be basically the angle from here to here to here. And the reason for that is this: you want that steeper as possible so that you can get over hills. You can almost see what's happening here with that breakover angle. So the longer your wheels are, the longer your vehicle is, the worse that breakover angle is going to be. And what's going to happen is when you roll your front wheels over here, and then your front wheels start to go down the back side of that hill, you're going to hit a point, if the vehicle's too long, where this wheel is on the ground over here, before this one can get high enough up that you end up hitting the frame of that vehicle and catching that breakover angle, and you're stuck. You're high centered. Your vehicle is trying to go over this, and it's trying to go up and over, and then it gets stuck on there, and it's just not doing nothing. This wheel's not on the ground, this one's not. You're just stuck on that frame. That's a breakover angle. You want to avoid that. That's another important angle to keep in mind and consider. The last one is our departure angle, which is this angle right here. Okay, this is that departure angle, which means that once you get your approach angle through there and your breakover angle through there, you have to get the back end to come out, otherwise you're going to hang up on there. Now that approach angle can also be complicated too. If you, I see this a lot. I see this quite often, and there's evidence of it in the woods where I'm at, where we hunt all the time. It's an unmistakable, noticeable thing, and it'll make sense when I explain it to you. But remember, I live in the woods, okay? I spend all my time in the woods. We don't have a lot of hills here, but we have a lot of mud. We have a lot of soft sand. We have a lot of horrible ruts, and we have a lot of just wicked holes. You know, holes even in the 2 tracks where they're just washed out and they're gone. But I mean, we have holes that are that deep. You know, this deep on me in roads, in trails and things. So we got a lot of really gnarly stuff here that we do have to deal with. This I see quite often. You see somebody with a truck, and then they put a hitch on the back of that truck. So let's remove that approach angle and take that out of here for a second. So we take that right out of there. But then they put a hitch on here. But because their truck is taller, they put this drop hitch. So they got a hitch that comes down like this. And then here's the ball of their hitch for this drop hitch. Okay, well then now that approach angle that was here is now going to here. Okay, like that. So you've lost almost half of your approach angle, or your departure angle. I'm sorry, departure angle. So then what you see is, you see these holes that I'm talking about that I see everywhere in the woods. You'll go through and you'll see that hole, and you'll see this huge trench mark that drops right down into this, and then coming up you'll see that huge cut right through there that is perfectly shaped, about that wide. It is from them dragging and ripping that trailer hitch right down through the edge of that thing, because they have such a lower departure angle now because of that hitch. So those are basically your 3 angles that are going to come into play. Now the other one is actual ground clearance. Ground clearance here, people think, okay, look at the ground clearance from here to here. This is what you call ground clearance. No, that is not ground clearance, okay? That may be a version of ground clearance. This is ground clearance, okay? If this is your ground right here, it is usually it's the part that's going to hang up and stop your wheels from moving. That's the part that matters. On a truck, which most of you guys are looking at, you have an axle back here, you have a differential right here in the middle, and you have another axle that comes through. That axle is going to always be right in the center of the wheel. It has to be. So whatever size tires you are, if you got, let's say that you have a 32-inch tire, then basically you're going to have a 16-inch to the center of that axle. You're going to have about 14 inches of clearance to that axle, but you may only end up with about 8 inches of clearance between here. Okay, in this spot right here to here. This spot right in here might only be 8 inches. Okay, where this might be, might be 14 inches. But you got to keep these into consideration, because these are what's going to hang up for you. If you're driving and you get into ruts, okay, so say the center, let's say that your trail, as you're looking at it, that trail goes like this, and it goes like this across, and then here's a tire rut right here. Here's the mound of that center part. Here's a tire rut like this, and that's what you got to drive through as you're looking down it. That's what it looks like. Your tire is going to be in here like this, okay, as you're going. This tire is in here like this as you're going. You need to get this stuff, the axles in that differential, to be able to get through there too. Well, that differential needs to be, axle has to be here, axle has to be here, means the differential has to be here. You can see the problem. What's going to happen is it's actually going to ride up here, it's going to ride here to here, and then your wheels are not going to touch the ground. You are going to bottom out on that axle and that differential. That is going to be bad for you. That is going to cause you issues, and it's going to make it where your back wheels do not work for you. So that's one of those things that you want to take into consideration with that. That ground clearance is important. And again, on a truck, it is usually based on, for the most part, the size of tires that are put on there, because any rear-wheel drive vehicle or any solid axle differential type thing like most trucks are going to have that differential and that solid axle that you're going to have to take into consideration. The only way to really improve that over what you have from factory is to go to bigger tires. If you go to bigger tires or wheels, when you do this, okay, you're moving that axle point, because that tire is going up higher, you're going to move that up higher, moving this up higher. So that's your advantage to putting bigger wheels on these things, is to gain that ground clearance. Ground clearance is a very important one. And then there's also other issues that you might want to look at on certain vehicles. Some of them run to shock towers, so your shock that comes up to the car will be inboard right in here nice and tight, which gives you all this distance here to be able to negotiate around rocks or stumps or things that are there. You got this room between the differential and a wheel and that shock tower to actually crawl your way through there and get through there without a problem. Some of the vehicles out there will put that shock tower right here, and it will drop down like this, and then that shock goes up. Now you have no room with that shock there to be able to fit that rig through there by a stump, to get over a stump that's right here like this, or a rock or whatever it is, without hitting that shock tower and damaging it. So there are things that you need to really look at when you start talking about ground clearance in here. So when you weigh that consideration, we're just going to erase that, and then I'm going to draw it back in there for a minute here for you, again, because I don't want to overcomplicate this or make it too crazy. But so there it is. We got a wheel here, and we got a wheel here, and you got now that was with solid axles. If you get into a IFS, independent front suspension, and independent rear suspension with CV joints and things like that, now you have a little difference. You still have a control arm here, but then that axle is usually going up like this. Control arm here, and that axle is going up to a differential here, or to a transfer case. So you do have all this extra ground clearance here, which is definitely a nice thing on certain vehicles. There are pros and cons to both, whether it's solid axle or independent suspension. I'm not going to get too detailed into that right now. Most of you guys are watching this are probably thinking trucks. But this is one of the reasons that I can get through stuff with my Jeep Cherokee, my Cherokee Trailhawk, that my trucks could never go into, is because of this advantage right here. I actually have more ground clearance in my Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk than I do in my big Ram 2500 diesel, okay, with the biggest wheels I can fit on them. But I have more ground clearance on my Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk because of this setup on here. So there are considerations. Not to get too far into this, but there are differences. I have much less control or flex with that suspension in my Cherokee with it independent, because you don't get any full articulation with the axle that you do see with a car, like with independent suspension. This travel distance for here to here might only be, let's say it's 6 to 7 inches or something, that wheel is just going to go up and down right here. Okay, it's all it can do on the suspension, straight up, straight down, and it works on this pivot point. It just goes up and down. If you had a solid axle on here like this, we were just talking about, differential here and an axle that comes across, this one here, because it is a solid unit, when you hit bumps, it will pivot, okay? And it can go up and down like this. But because of that articulation, you may end up with this travel in this thing being somewhere in the neighborhood. It could be anywhere from 8 to 14 inches that wheel can come up. The advantage to that is if I get this in a hole, I only have so much distance that this can drop down to engage traction. It's not so much about how high it will go, but if I'm driving and I hit a hole right here, if I have, if we got a hole in here, I cannot maybe hit that hole because this is where my car is and that runs out of drop in that wheel, so I can't get any engagement. Where this whole system can pivot like this to get into that hole that's there and give me that traction while maintaining traction up here on the high side. That one can't do it. So there's a lot of pros and cons and advantages. I don't want to make that too confusing. But so we understand ground clearance is based on whatever is going to hang you up underneath the vehicle. Whether it's solid axle with a differential, shock towers, whatever it is, or if it's an independent setup like this. But whatever is under your car, when you lay down on the ground and you look under your car, whatever's hanging down under there that is going to high side you and make it, because when you park this, or when any of these parts are on top of solid ground and your tires cannot hit the dirt, when you have ground right here that is holding you up and the ground needs to be here to hit your tires, this tire can do nothing, okay? So in the same scenario here, if that same setup is here and it's up here, but this tire can be on the ground here, that tire will now drive. That tire can actually get traction and go. Here it cannot get traction and go. So understand that regardless of whatever system, that's why ground clearance matters the most. And it matters in all four corners and everywhere there is. So that is important. Now, when it comes time to understand putting all of this together, when it comes to these three angles, because there's way more to this we're going to get into, but this is important to understand these three angles. So when you have these three angles that you got to deal with on here, when you get into basically, let's say that you have, as we said there, right there, now a hill is one thing. This, I'm not going to draw because it makes sense right there. If that's a hill, you can see how we crashed right into there. But you can also see that if we did the same hill again, right here, okay, and we took it into a smaller vehicle that had a wheel here and it had a wheel here and that car was going this way, you can see how we clear that because we have a shorter wheelbase. Where the longer wheelbase would put it here and keep it there, and when you draw that car, crash, we smash right into it. It's that concept. So the shorter the differences between the axles, the better off-road it's going to be because you can high center that stuff. Again, people are saying, well, I don't drive over those hills. They're everywhere. Motorcycle berms we have here, we got side-by-side trails and snowmobile trails. These guys come ripping along and they build these berms that are literally this high that we have to get over. In my trucks, that would mean that I get my front end over there and then I'm stuck on the frame, just like this, sitting there on a berm in a wide open place looking like a complete idiot, but so many side-by-sides would come through there and wash that up that now it's a mess and I am stuck on that thing right there, that high side center on there, where my Jeep Cherokee goes right up and over that stuff because it has a shorter wheelbase in between here. So that is something to consider. Shorter wheelbase is better for you. That means that, you know, and again, it's all relative to what you're doing with it. You know, I mean, there's you know, pros and cons to everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you go with a shorter wheelbase vehicle for better off-road capabilities, you are going to either lose the length of your bed in your truck, you're going to go from a crew cab to an extended cab, whatever it takes to be able to shorten that space up, you're losing cargo and passenger capacity. Where if you go to a bigger truck, extended cab, crew cab, 8-foot bed, you are gaining more capacity and cargo area, but you are now a longer wheelbase and you are going to have a lower breakover angle. That's not going to be as good for you. All things are relative. You have to see what works best for you, which is why we're doing this. I'm not trying to show you what the best off-roader is, I'm trying to show you the things that you want to take into consideration. Same with the approach and departure angle. Now, where it most commonly comes into play that people don't think about is going to be holes. Okay, so here's a road, here's a hole right here in the road, whether it's rutted out or not rutted out, whatever it is, but you run into these kind of things. Well, when you bring a car into this hole and you have, let me clear this out of here. Okay, we'll get rid of some of that. But so when you come into this hole, and you have your car comes in, so you got your front wheel that's going to drop in right here like this, okay, back wheel's out here, okay, but that front wheel drops in. When it does, this approach angle on the front of the vehicle that's right here becomes an issue when you're there and you go up. But you can see now what's happening. Let me actually draw that. I'll just redraw it lower again so you can understand it. We'll only make it a little bit smaller here. So here's that hole right here. So you come into here, that front wheel comes into right here, back wheel is here, that takes the angle of the truck here, drops down, here's your front bumper, comes up, hood comes up, that way, windshield, back of the truck. Okay, see that problem with the approach angle right there? That smash into that? That is that approach angle we're talking about right here. A for approach, that is the approach, this is D for departure, this is B for breakover. But that's where my F-150s were causing me all kinds of problems. I hit these holes that are washed out, whether they're creek crossings, they're washed out by water flowing through, they're damaged by side-by-sides and Jeeps and things like that, where there's a low spot and then they just keep going through it and wrecking it. But this is a major issue right there for that approach angle. So that's something you got to be able to fix and correct and take care of. On the departure side, same thing. Okay, these holes are here. Now when you get your front end out of here, here's your front wheel. here's your back wheel dropping in right here, okay, right in here. What you end up happening is you got here's your front end, comes up and over like this right here, comes down, goes over, and then smash right here. You can see where you are hitting here. Right there, you can see that smack right there coming out of that hole. That is departure angle problems that you're having right there as well. And then I don't even need to draw it, but you can see where the breakover angle right here, this little spot right here, could be an issue right there coming in and out of holes. Going in, it could be the same thing right here. This part right here could be an issue, and that part right there could be an issue. So holes are one of those places that it's a major issue and a concern. Other one are the ruts. Well, I'm going to erase this. I hope that all makes sense for you so you understand that. Now when we get into the rut factor, ruts are just like holes, but they're only where the wheels are. Again, we had that spot here where you had the trail, tire rut, trail, tire rut, like this. Now as your wheels are going through this, what's going to happen, let's say that this is your car frame. Okay, actually let me rephrase that here. Let's do it this way. Let's put your differential right on here. Axle comes out, wheel comes down like this. Okay, it's like this. You can see where that differential becomes a problem if you're not actually hitting the bottom of that hole. You are now high-sided. Okay, whether it happens as a breakover point on the side of the frame or it happens on the differential of the axle, you are now having zero traction because you're not touching the bottom of that hole. All right, that's one issue. The other issue with these same kind of scenarios on here, besides ground clearance, is going to be approach and departure angles are going to hit you here also, because if you look at the front of the vehicle, if we're trying to come through this same rutted out section, even if your tires can get in here, if the front of your vehicle, this angle is too low, because of this, your wheels may go through, but what you might end up finding is that the front of your vehicle ends up hitting like this. Okay, here's the front of your car, windshield comes up, here you go, here's your headlights. Okay, your tires are down in here, but you can see this issue right here, this point where you are crashing right there on that, that is because of the fact that that approach angle is too low. So when your tires are down in here, you end up scraping, grinding that right across down the front end. And that becomes that's an approach angle, ground clearance issue. That is your clearance issue from here to here. Those all come into play on all these scenarios. So that's why these three angles are what's most important for you to take into consideration for when you're off-roading. It is going to be approach angle, departure angle, breakover angle, and then the big one, the other one is G for ground clearance. Okay, those are the basic four things that you're going to take into consideration when it comes to understanding and making the vehicle, what's going to make a good off-road vehicle. Now we're going to go ahead and get into talking about some of the four-wheel drive systems and understanding, because there's so much people don't actually understand about it. So I'm going to clear this, redraw this, and we're going to talk about this, because I'll bet some of this stuff is going to blow your mind, especially if you're new to all of this. It is going to absolutely freak you out. Like when I tell you that your four-wheel drive vehicle is really only a two-wheel drive vehicle, and that your two-wheel drive vehicle is really only a one-wheel drive vehicle, and how to beat that and how things work. So we're going to set this up and I'll be right back. We'll do that in a second. All right, now we're going to talk about four-wheel drive systems, because there are variations out there. You have true four-wheel drive systems, all-wheel drive systems. You have a variety, but basically we're going to leave that to we're going to just go right into true 4x4 systems. All right, now an all-wheel drive system, like I said, they're a little more complicated in that. Some of them are good, some of them are not. We're going to stay out of that. But going right into four-wheel drive systems, like you're going to find on your trucks, you're going to find on like my Cherokee that I have, my Cherokee Trailhawk has an actual four-wheel drive system in it, four-wheel drive low, things like that. But basically, the differential, the drive system, you have three different versions of four-wheel drives, okay? You have four-wheel drive with an open differential. All right, what that means is that it is open. So if this is a four-wheel drive vehicle, here's the front of it, here's the rear, you put it in four-wheel drive, all four wheels are spinning now, right? Not really, okay? They may be spinning and working for you and getting traction until you get stuck. once you get stuck, what's going to happen with this, let's say that you get your front wheel, you get into some mud or some soft sand, whichever one of the front wheels loses traction, the weak link, okay, it's always the weak link, but whichever wheel of your front two tires, you know, you're thinking both of them would be spinning, right? Well, whichever one actually does break free and doesn't have traction, the power goes to that one, and it's just this one that will actually, this one becomes the one that spins, okay? This one sits idle, or you can look at it either way, call that one a dead one. This one's the one that's sitting there spinning. This one you would think would be the one that would move because it has traction. It doesn't. The power goes to the weakest link. So you're sitting here, so really, and then let's say that you're in there in that sand, and then your other back one, let's say that it's this one on this side is the one that has traction. These are your two loose wheels. These ones are the ones that are actually spinning right here. It's just these two wheels that are spinning, and they're doing nothing for you. So even though you think you have it in four-wheel drive, it's really only a two-wheel drive vehicle when you're stuck, because the differential is what we call open. That means that the weakest link on an axle being across here and across here, but whichever one is the weakest link in your front, that front wheel that's the weakest link gets the power, and the weakest link in the rear gets the power. So if you were sitting there in snowy ground, you know, basically, or let's put that into perspective like this. Let's say, to make it real simple, let's say that you were driving in your car or your truck, and you sort of slid off the road a little bit, right? So you just barely slid off the road on a snowy day, and two of your wheels are on pavement, and the other two are over just off the crest of the road and they're in the snow. If that's the case, you put it in four-wheel drive, think you'll drive right out. Well, the two that are on pavement, they will basically stay idle and dead and not move, where the two that are in the snow will be the ones that end up spinning because they're the ones that can break free. So this becomes your open differential. So even though you want these two wheels to do something, they're not gonna. It's the two weakest ones that get the power. That's an open differential. And there are some variations to this, but I'm trying to put it into simple perspective. But when you get stuck, that's the way that usually works. That's why it's open differential. You know, if whatever one is the weakest link gets the power. And you wish it would be the exact opposite. Now, there are a lot of computer-controlled systems, you know, like with different locking options, like BLD, which is computerized control brake locking differential. There's a lot of different things out there that a lot of different vehicles have. But in theory, in essence, if you have an open differential, even though it's four-wheel drive vehicle like you're thinking, you really only have two drive wheels when you get into the crappy situations where you wish you had more. You may get a little bit of spinning, and it would probably pull you out of that snowy road situation because you would get enough to maybe move this on that flat ground. But if you were in mud, or if you were in sand, or you were high-sided on a breakover angle, something like that, the weakest link is going to get the power. All right, so that's an open differential system. And it doesn't matter which one, how it is, whichever wheel is weak and spinning or can break free the quickest, that one gets the power. Now, when you get into what we call a rear locker, a lot of vehicles have rear lockers. One of the reasons I bought my Cherokee was because Trailhawk is because it has a rear locker. It's a beautiful thing. A lot of trucks you can buy today you can get with a rear locker option. That comes with, like, if you buy an F-150, the FX4 package comes with a rear locker. Some of the other ones too, you can get it as an option. Same with Ram, same with Chevy, same with Toyota, same with all of them. You can get them with a rear locker. When you have a rear locker, that means that you have the same scenario in the front where one wheel, whichever the weak link is the one that's going to get the power, just like in the open. But in the back, they are both locked in and both moving 50-50. Basically, we're going to round it and just call it for practical purposes 50% of power to each. So now you actually have here you only have a two-wheel vehicle. You have one wheel here in a stuck situation, so this becomes a two-wheel drive in crappy situations. With a rear locker, it becomes a three-wheel drive in crappy situations. So you gain one more wheel, so that's a lot more, so that's a nice option. These two are going to work for you. This one will alternate to whichever one has the power. with full front and rear lockers, now you actually have all four-wheel drive. Not until you have front and rear lockers do you get four-wheel drive when you're actually stuck. Now, every single wheel is moving forward, basically call it half and half, 50-50 through every one of them. Are capable of working for you. That means that if this wheel is off the ground and spinning, this one will still have the power to move you out. Same with vice versa, whatever way you want to cut it. So this is a very rudimentary but honest understanding of an open differential, rear locker, and front and rear lockers. There are not many vehicles that you can buy that have front and rear lockers. It's just not an option for a lot of them. I know like Jeep Rubicons have them. I think you can get a Chevy, I think like the Bison Colorado or something may come with them. I know there's not a lot of them that do. I don't even know if the Raptor has front and rear lockers. I'm not sure, but there are limited vehicles that actually have full front and rear lockers. Most of them that you get are going to be with an open differential. Rear lockers are going to be a very nice feature. I don't buy them anymore unless I got that rear locker. I'm too tired of fighting with this system, so I want that rear locker in there as well too. So this kind of helps you understand what you're looking for. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, it might very well be worth looking for that addition. Usually it's a rear locker, limited slip rear end, anything like that. They're not that expensive. Usually somewhere between $500 and $1,000 upgrade to have that option. When you're buying that vehicle, that might be a nice thing, because it is what takes you from stuck scenarios. It takes you from two-wheel drive to three-wheel drive, and that's actually a nice benefit, because with an open differential on a two-wheel drive vehicle, so if you're in two-wheel drive and you have your four wheels here and you're in two-wheel drive mode where it's only, let's say it's a truck and this is your only drivetrain, if these wheels get stuck, same thing happens. One of them is not going to work, one of them is going to go forward. So when you're in two-wheel drive mode, it is actually one-wheel drive when you're stuck. A lot of people don't realize or understand this, and it is worth knowing. And again, there's way too much for me to elaborate in full detail, because you have actual mechanical lockers, you have BLD, brake differential or brake locking differentials, you have computer controlled versions, you have all sorts of different things. Now there are some things that you can do if you're running open and you get into that stuck situation. A lot of people don't realize, but if you apply the brake pedal and the gas, using the gas like you would, but if you apply the brakes, a lot of times you can create that brake limited differential setup in there by hitting the brake, and you can actually cause enough stoppage to the wheel that's spinning to transfer the traction. The other one is kind of a finagle game. Some of the newer cars fight you on it as well too. It used to be an old school trick, but point being, this is basically your four-wheel drive systems, something you want to take into consideration and think about. We'll be right back with some more. Alright, now we're going to talk about some wants for your vehicle for recovery stuff. First category is going to be somebody else recovers you, okay? That's going to be these two things, three things basically, but you can get somebody to come out and help you. If you got tow hooks on your vehicle, front and rear, then you're in pretty good shape if you got tow straps or chains, okay? This is very simple to do, nothing crazy. Most of your four-wheel drive vehicles are going to have tow hooks on them. I say most because some of them don't. My Renegade that I had was four-wheel drive and did not have any tow hooks on it at all. My daughter's Compass does not have any tow hooks on it at all. My wife's Explorers that she had were four-wheel drive also. They don't have any tow hooks on those. So a lot of vehicles don't have them, but most trucks fortunately do. My Jeep Cherokee Trailhawk model has tow hooks front and back. That's one of the reasons I went with the Trailhawk option. But there's solutions for that. But if you got tow hooks and a couple of 30-foot tow straps, two of them at least, and a couple shackles, somebody can get you out. I'll put some links in the description below for some of this recovery gear that I think is well worth having. So if you just right next to where the video name is, if you hit the little down arrow on your phone, it'll pop down in the description and you'll see all these things linked right there for you where you can click right on them. And I'll have those below for you. But tow straps, tow hooks cover everything. Now, if you have a vehicle like my Renegade or like an SUV that does not have tow hooks on it, or you're in a two-wheel drive truck or something without tow hooks, then the other option is what's called a tow bridle. Okay, a tow bridle, I bought one of these, and I used to use it to pull other people's cars out of the woods, or out when they're stuck in the snow, things like that. It comes in very handy if you have a truck and you want to recover a vehicle that doesn't have tow hooks. And I used it to pull my daughter's car out many times as well too, out of snowbanks and things like that. But a tow bridle is basically, and I'll have links to them below, but let's say that it's a D-ring right here, a strap that goes up, and then here there's going to be another ring on here, and it's probably going to veer off like this and veer off like this, and here are going to be a couple different J-hook and different attachments here like this, and there'll be some different kind of hooks on the ends of these. This is what a tow truck driver is going to use to slide in the front or rear. You're going to get under the vehicle in one of these JT, or I can't remember what they call them, J-hook, T-hook, and something else, but mainly the J-hook being the most common, but these are going to hook into the holes of the frame of that car where they're designed to do this. Every car has got tow-out points that are underneath that vehicle in the frame where it is designed for a tow truck driver to hook up to. He is going to take this bridle, go under, and lock this in front of one side of the frame, this inside of the other side of the frame. So if you put it even into more perspective, here's the front wheels. Well, I don't know why I made it that way, but let's just say that's front wheels. Here's rear wheels, okay? And you have a frame that runs right down here like this. Okay, here's your box frame. And in here is this box frame. Somewhere in here there are holes in these frames like this that are designed for that to actually attach into. So the net is going to hook into here, come to here, hook into here, come to here, tie together, come out here, and then there's that D-ring that the tow truck driver hooks onto to pull that vehicle out. That's what a tow bridle does. They're not expensive, not horribly expensive. They're about 75, 80 bucks, that kind of thing, but they last forever. They're really good, high quality, and they work great. So that is a tow bridle option if you're dealing with cars that don't have tow hooks on them. But so if yours does not have them and you're taking it into the woods and using it off-road, I recommend having this so that any other vehicle that comes to recover you, you can have this hooked up to give them this point right here, which is a place for them to connect to with the tow straps to recover you. So that tow bridle is important if you do not have tow hooks. Now those are for somebody else pulling you out and saving you. If you have to self-recover, which is my favorite way because I get tired, I don't want to call somebody and have them drive an hour and a half out while I sit there picking my butt waiting for them or waiting for them to come. There are three things right here that are mandatory, and you can pretty much get out of anything you could imagine if you have these. An air pump, a saw, and a shovel. All right? I mean, those are going to save you in most of your situations. Why an air pump? Because you would be amazed how many times you, especially soft sand and mud, if you just air your tires down, okay, you just take it, and I would include a pressure gauge with that because it makes it nice. You don't overdo it. You don't want to go too low where you're going to spin and break the bead of the wheel off, and then you're got a flat technically. You know, just so even those little, and they spit out the bottom little. I'll put links to some pressure gauges for you. They're cheap. You can get them for $1. But with an air pump, you can take that pressure gauge and that pin and let your tires down and deflate those tires. Creates a wider, longer contact patch on your tire. So when you think of a tire on here, let's do a tire this way. Let's make it round, okay? And then here's the ground. Your contact patch here is this big right there. And when you look at it sideways, here on this one, there's the ground, it is the width of that tire, right? There's your two contact patches, length and width. When you let that tire down, that contact patch now goes around and goes like this, more like this, and you can see how big that contact patch now becomes versus there. On the side profile, when you have that tire on the side like this here, okay, there's your side profile, and this being your width. Well, when you let that air down, it goes like this. It ends up going across here, comes down, and it goes like this. Like this. You can see how much bigger that contact patch is. So airing down your tires will usually be enough to help you get out of whatever trouble you're in. The air pump lets you, once you get out of there, quickly go around, ring, and just refill your tires in about 10-15 minutes total time. and you are back up to normal pressure and ready to go. So it is a fantastic setup. You don't want to be driving on the highway with 15 pounds of air in your tires. So having that air pump, which are dirt cheap, I will have links below. They plug right into your cigarette lighter or connect to your battery, and they come in so handy for everything. So they're a great thing to have. The saw. With a saw, it gives you the luxury of being able to provide material for traction. Okay, say you're stuck in the mud and you got two wheels in there and they're just spinning and doing nothing. If you have a saw, you can go over and grab a couple of saplings, cut them off, and wedge them and shove them in under the tires, creating kind of a ramp, and then drive right up out of those. So the saw comes in very handy to be able to cut material, trees and saplings and things like that, to be able to put in your wheels to get you the freedom that you need and get you the traction. Also to provide clearance. If you high-sided, if you went up and you hit and you're, like we were talking about, if you are center high-sided on there like this and you don't have any traction, you can use cut materials, sticks, logs, you can put rocks, whatever you want, but you can pile that stuff into the wheels to give those wheels, which are free spinning. So like if you have a hole right here and your wheel is here and not touching the bottom of that, you can put material in here. If say this is your drive direction, you can put material in here that wheel can now contact to and drive up out of there. The shovel lets you knock this down and take this out of here. You can shovel that out of there and take that from being what was like this to now being like this and give you a better drive angle out. So the shovel is important. Or if you're high-sided on the frame, here's a wheel, comes up and over, here's your frame, here's the back of the truck, comes up, windshield, right there. If you are stuck right here on the ground, again, in a hole, but if you are jammed up right here, you can use that shovel to remove that stuff out of there so that you have clearance now that you can drive out of. So that shovel becomes very handy. I'll have a link to my favorite one. I carry one in every single car. I carry the same shovel in every truck I've owned. Every car I have, my daughter's, my wife's, this shovel is in every single vehicle we have. It is dirt cheap and it will do everything that you need. Snow, sand, doesn't matter, mud, it will get you out of there. So air pump, saw, and shovel, mandatory stuff for self-recovery. Couple extras that are bonus. A good jack, a bottle jack. I like bottle jacks, but a bottle jack and a couple of pads, something solid, whether that's a piece of 2x6 or 2x8 or 2x10 wood. But if you can fit them in your bottle jack's only about yay big. They're not too much to deal with, and then a pad, but they throw right in the bed of your truck, under your seat, wherever you want. But they come in handy. Again, if you get high-sided, you get stuck, you can jack that up and put stuff under that wheel. Remove the jack and let it sit on there. Now you have traction. So they come in very handy. A come-along will let you self-recover with your tow straps and your tow hooks as long as that come-along is strong enough to handle your tow vehicle. Usually they max out at about 5,000 pounds for most under sub-$100 come-alongs. I have that big white Scott that I've done video reviews on. It'll pull 12,000 pounds. I carry that in my diesel all the time, and I've actually used it about 8 times between F-150s and that diesel truck. Matter of fact, we just used it when I was in Kansas trying to rebend an axle on my trailer when a deer hit it and totaled my truck out. We had that axle on that trailer, a deer hit it and bent that wheel out. Well, we actually pulled into a car wash, and we went and basically put it into simple perspective here. We had a trailer. So here is my trailer, which would be a V-nose here and like this. This is my trailer. Well, we had one wheel that was bent out like this, and the other one, this is how they should be, is straight. That wheel was bent. I pulled up in a car wash to a cement pillar post that was right here. I connected my come-along right here, went to a strap to that, ran it under the trailer, and brought that strap in and hooked it to the front of this wheel, wrenching on that, and took that wheel from that angle to end up bringing it in even better to about, well, we cut that angle in half and made it where we could at least drive and fight it the rest of the way, but we had to use that come-along to fix that. So having a come-along in there is a good idea. Also, 2x4s and straps if you have the clearance in your tire well, in your wheel wells. If not, they do make tire paws or things like that. I'll put some links below for you. But these are traction pads that strap right to your tire, and as you're driving, they catch and they bite, and they give you the clearance and give you the traction traction to get out of there. If you got clearance and room in it, like we have on my Ram 2500 diesel, I use 2x4s. They're in the back end. 2x4s and ratchet straps. I can put that 2x4 right on the tire, and as I go, that tire will spin around, and it'll hit. So you have a tire, right here's your tire, and it's just spinning, catching nothing. If you mount a 2x4 right on here like this, strap it right, here's your wheel, okay, it goes like this, and you take that 2x4 and you actually strap it right through the rim, right around the 2x4, that as that spins, that will now catch the ground here where you were spinning through. It'll foam and it'll catch and paddle you out of there. I've done videos on it. You want more detail? Look at it where I say in there. I did a video called, I did one on getting your vehicle unstuck, and I also did one called why you should carry 2x4s in the back of your truck, and it shows you that in full detail. But those are great options as well too. So hopefully this gives you some pointers towards the whole just, off-road and understanding for your hunting rigs, which we're secluded by ourselves and in remote places when we're hunting. This is important to us. If you want to do some off-roading and be out there with your family and enjoying things and checking new country, overlanding, any of that stuff, this is going to matter. It's important stuff that you know and understand. So hopefully it helps you out and gives you some good pointers. And in that videos that I've done, that self-recovery one, there's other, rope. If you're in the snow, carry some rope. I use dock line. Get it from any marine store. I'll put a link to it on Amazon. But you take that 1/2-inch dock line, put it through your rim and tie it so that you got a piece of rope right here, piece of rope right here, and right here, like that, and where that 2x4 would be even. You don't even need that many, but that rope will bite on that snow and ice and help pull you out of there better than you could ever imagine. It's just a matter of feeding a piece of rope through there and tying it in a knot. Feed a piece of rope through and tie it in a knot, but you'd be amazed at the power that that's going to do for you. So a lot of great tips there, but hopefully this video kind of gives you some good pointers and understanding that four-wheel drive, it's not as cut and dried as people think. And it's not like, oh, I got four-wheel drive, that you actually have four-wheel drive. As you saw, your four-wheel drive might mean that you have two-wheel drive, or maybe you're lucky three-wheel drive, and most likely not actually four-wheel drive in stuck situations. So thanks for watching. We'll be back with more stuff soon. All right, bye.